Singapore, huh? Thinking about making the leap, making it home, I bet it's a mix of like total excitement and a little bit of, whoa, where do I even start?
Yeah, it's a big move, no doubt. There's a
Yeah.
lot to figure out, but hey, that's why we're here, right? To break it down.
Exactly. And luckily, we've got this awesome guide from moveinstay.com. These guys have been helping people navigate Asia for like over 25 years. They know their stuff, especially when it comes to finding a place to live, whether you need something for a few days or a few years.
You really do. They've seen it all. So their insights are super valuable, especially for this deep dive. We want to make sure you feel confident and ready to tackle this adventure.
Totally. So let's jump right in. What's the first thing anyone thinking about Singapore needs to know?
I'd say it's the culture, right? It's this amazing blend of Chinese, Malay, Indian, Eurasian. It's what makes Singapore so unique.
It's not just like a statistic, though, is it? It's woven into everyday life. You see it, feel it, experience it everywhere. Yeah, and the guide from moveandstay.com really emphasizes that. They say understanding and respecting these cultural differences is key to having smooth, positive interactions.
Absolutely. I mean, even things like how you greet people, how direct you are in communication, it can all vary based on the cultural context. It's those little things that can make a big difference. And MoveInStay.com, with their years of experience, they really get that.
It's so true. And it goes beyond just knowing when the holidays are. It's about understanding the values behind those traditions and how they influence how people interact. Oh, and speaking of communication, the guide mentions learning a few basic phrases.
That's a good point. Singapore's got several official languages, plus English, which is a whole other thing. You don't have to be fluent. But even a few words in Malay, Mandarin, or Tamil can go a long way in building connections.
Right. It shows you're making an effort, that you're interested in more than just, living there. You want to engage with the local culture, and that ties directly into the next big thing, social integration. MoveAndStay.com stresses this is so important for actually feeling at home in a new place.
No matter how exciting the city is, if you're not connecting with people, it can get lonely. And that's where those expat groups come in, right? The guide mentions the American Association, the British Club. Those can be great starting points.
They're fantastic for meeting people who are going through the same thing, who get what it's like to be an expat. But the guide also encourages you to branch out, to network, volunteer, find activities that resonate with you. It's all about putting yourself out there.
And honestly, that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice MoveAndStay.com gives, based on what they've seen over the years. The people who really thrive are the ones who actively build their social circles.
It's that sense of community, right? Makes all the difference. But of course, moveandstay.com acknowledges that it's not always easy. Culture shock, homesickness, those are real things.
Definitely. The guide likely emphasizes that you've got to be patient with yourself. It takes time to adjust. And don't be afraid to reach out for support if you need it, whether it's to other expats, those associations we mentioned, or even professional help.
It's okay to not be okay all the time, especially in a brand new environment. All right, now let's switch gears to something a little less emotional and more practical. The dreaded paperwork.
Oh, yes. The essential documentation. MoveAndStay.com, with their experience in relocation, knows this is crucial. Got to get it sorted out early.
Absolutely. The guide breaks down the visa situation, tourist visa for short stays, student pass if you're studying, and then the work visa, which is probably what most people listening are interested in. They also wisely point you to the ICA website, the official source, because the rules can change and you want to be up to date.
Makes sense. For those work visas, they probably explain the main categories. The employment pass for professionals, managers, executives, but you got to meet certain salary requirements. Then there's the S Pass, which is more for mid-level skilled workers, and it has its own set of criteria and quotas. And finally, the work permit, which is for specific sectors.
The good news is, the guide points out that your employer usually takes care of the work pass application, but it's good to understand the different types so you know what you're dealing with.
Totally. And beyond work permits, you'll need your passport, obviously. Make sure it's got plenty of validity left. Birth certificate, marriage certificate if that applies, any educational or professional qualifications, medical records. Oh, and your driving license if you plan to drive in Singapore.
And here's a tip, probably straight from moveandstay.com. Make copies of everything, certified copies, both physical and digital. You'll thank yourself later. Trust me on this one.
It's such a good idea.
Yeah.
Now, once you've got your paperwork sorted, the next big hurdle, finding a place to live, moveandstay.com knows this is huge. It can make or break your experience.
It really can. You want a place that feels like home, right? Somewhere you can relax and recharge. And the guide actually talks about some popular expat neighborhoods. They mention Holland Village, which is known for its lively atmosphere and good transportation. Then there's Tiong Bahru, which has that artsy kind of bohemian feel. Some people call it Singapore's Brooklyn.
Oh, I like that. And for those who are into the food scene and want to be close to the business district, they mentioned Tanjong Pagar. But like MoveOnStay.com would say, the best neighborhood really depends on your lifestyle, your preferences, your budget.
Speaking of budget, the guide gives some average monthly rental costs, which can be helpful for getting a general sense of things. They say a one-bedroom condo could be anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 Singapore dollars.
Hmm.
A one-bedroom apartment, maybe 2,500 to 4,000. And then landed properties. Those are, of course, a lot more expensive.
But it's important to remember, those are just averages. MoveOnStay.com would definitely tell you to do your research because the actual cost will depend on the specific location, size, amenities, all of that.
Absolutely. Location, 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 right. And once you find that dream place, you're going to be looking at a lease agreement. MoveAndStay.com says most leases are for 1 or 2 years. They highlight the important things to pay attention to, like, the rent amount, obviously, when and how it's paid, the security deposit, what's included in terms of utilities and maintenance. Are there any restrictions on pets, guests, and crucially, how does the renewal or termination process work?
This is where MoveAndStay.com's deep experience in the rental market really comes in handy. They'd strongly advise having a lawyer look over that lease before you sign anything. It could save you a lot of hassle down the line.
It's so worth it to have someone who knows the ins and outs, make sure you're protected. Okay, now let's talk about work. I imagine a lot of people moving to Singapore are doing it for career opportunities. MoveAndStay.com paints a pretty exciting picture of the job market there, especially in tech.
Yeah, they highlight fields like AI. Data science is being super hot right now. Finance is also big, with banking, investment, fintech, and then healthcare is another growing sector. But no matter what field you're in, they emphasize that adaptability and a willingness to learn are essential. Those are the qualities employers are looking for.
And the guide probably talks about networking, right? It's crucial, especially in a place like Singapore. MoveAndStay.com would likely suggest going to industry events, joining professional associations, using LinkedIn to connect with people.
Even attending those casual meetups can be great for making connections and hearing about opportunities. And the guide also likely touches on Singapore's work culture, giving a heads up about things like the formality, the strong emphasis on efficiency and productivity.
Yeah, in some industries, like finance, you might be looking at longer working hours. And the hierarchical structures are something to be aware of.
It's all about setting realistic expectations, right? Now let's move on to something super important, healthcare and insurance. MoveAndStay.com gives a rundown of the system in Singapore, explaining that it's a mix of public and private.
They point out that the public system is heavily subsidized for citizens and permanent residents. But for expats, it can be quite expensive, so they'll likely be using the private system more often. The guide might mention MediSave, MediShield Life, MediFund. These are all part of the national healthcare framework.
Yeah, it can be a little confusing to navigate, so it's good that they give some context. And MoveAndStay.com would almost certainly recommend that expats get private health insurance, given the potential costs without those subsidies. They might even suggest looking into providers like Cigna, who specialize in international healthcare.
They probably also go over what to consider when choosing a plan, like what's covered inpatient care, outpatient care, specialists, emergency evacuation, how much the premiums are, and any exclusions, which is super important to understand. Always read that fine print.
Absolutely. And the guide likely provides some essential emergency information, like the number to call for an ambulance, which is 995. It's also good to familiarize yourself with the locations of 24-hour hospitals and clinics, just in case.
Okay, ready for the topic everyone's thinking about? Cost of living. MoveAndStay.com doesn't sugarcoat it. Singapore can be pricey.
But they also emphasize that it's manageable, especially with some smart planning.
Right, and they know this firsthand, having helped so many people find housing. They'd probably point out that housing is usually the biggest expense. The closer you are to the city center, the higher the rent, obviously. Different types of properties come with different price tags, and sharing a place can be a good way to save money.
They might also mention that some landlords prefer corporate leases because they know expats might not stay as long. And then there's the decision of furnished versus unfurnished. Furnished is convenient, but usually means higher rent. Unfurnished is cheaper, but you've got to invest in furniture and appliances.
Then there are the everyday expenses, like food. MoveAndStay.com likely raves about the hawker centers. Those are a great way to experience local food and eat cheaply. Groceries, especially imported stuff, can get expensive, so that's something to be mindful of.
And how about transportation? MoveAnta.com would definitely highlight Singapore's excellent public transport system. Getting a monthly pass can save you a lot of money. They'd probably compare that to taxis and private cars, which are significantly more expensive.
They might even have a little table showing the average costs, which is really helpful for visualization.
Huh.
But what's great is how MoveAndStay.com frames the whole cost of living conversation. Yeah, Singapore's expensive, but they'd also point out that salaries for experienced professionals tend to reflect that. And the tax rates are relatively low, which is a big plus.
And if your expat package includes things like housing allowance, transport, school fees, that can make a huge difference in your budget.
Exactly. They do acknowledge that accommodation and education can be major expenses, especially if you're paying for those yourself. And if you love imported goods, those can add up too. But if you're smart about it, eat local, use public transport, you can definitely save money. It's all about finding that balance. And they also remind you of all the amazing things that come with living in Singapore, the quality of life, the diversity, the incredible food scene, the travel opportunities.
It's all part of the package, right? But they likely also mention that the cost of housing rentals is on the rise, and buying property as a foreigner is becoming more difficult with tighter regulations. It's something to factor into your long-term plans.
Okay, let's circle back to that social life one more time. Moving to a new country can be isolating, and MoveAndStay.com knows that. They'd probably emphasize that Singapore has a really vibrant expat community, which is great for making those initial connections.
They might suggest joining online forums, social media groups, those expat associations we talked about earlier. They can help you navigate those first few months, answer questions, and organize social events.
It's all about finding your tribe, right? And the guide likely encourages branching out beyond just the expat bubble. Joining social clubs, sports teams, volunteering, finding activities based on your interests. It's a great way to meet people, both locals and expats, who share your passions.
Absolutely. And they might give some practical tips for connecting with locals, like being open and approachable, participating in local events, festivals, markets, even learning a few basic phrases in the local languages can go a long way.
It shows you're making an effort, and people appreciate that. At the end of the day, MoveAndStay.com would probably say that building a solid social network takes time and effort, but it's absolutely essential for a fulfilling expat experience. It's what makes a place feel like home.
Couldn't agree more. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Thanks to MoveAndStay.com, we've explored the key things to consider when moving to Singapore. Visas, finding accommodation, which is their forte, navigating the job market, understanding the healthcare system, that all-important cost of living, and of course, building a social life.
It's been a great deep dive, and I hope everyone listening feels more informed, prepared for their potential move. What MoveAndStay.com really highlights is that, yes, it takes preparation and effort, but Singapore offers so much in return. The quality of life, the cultural richness, the career opportunities. It's an incredible place to live.
It truly is. So as you weigh your options and envision your life in this dynamic city-state, think about what stood out to you today. What resonated most? What new questions popped up? Maybe take a look at MoveAndStay.com's website. They have a wealth of information there. What's the one thing you're going to research further today to move one step closer to your Singapore adventure?
That's a great question. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.